So do you think strategic ambiguity is making an invasion of Taiwan more or less likely?
I think now it makes it unfortunately more likely. I do think we need clarity, and the reason we need clarity is we don't have that. And look, strategic clarity has got to be backed up by other actions. And those other actions are. I mean, I've written a few articles on this and spoken in some interviews that there are explicit things we have to do both to develop ourselves, develop the Taiwans, uh, integrate between the two of us, and then integrate in allies and partners. So across the all three of those lines of effort, we have to do things, and only as you do that will strategic clarity have value. But I think that's the only option. Strategic ambiguity, backed up by questionable credibility on whether we'll use the force and a weakening level of military and economic power, is not a feasible long-term solution here.
Well, so what are some of those specifics that you think the U.S. does need to do?
Well, for us, it's about being more capable to, within, 6 to 10 days, having the relevant forces in position and able to repulse any type of counter-intervention force or intervention force that was coming from China, support the Taiwans with that, and help them in the case of, say, some kind of a blockade or quarantine. Those kind of things are very specifically. We have to get better and more prolific at long-range anti-ship cruise missiles. Michel Flournoy, in an article about, I guess now almost 2 years ago, wrote that we basically have to be able to remove about, we have to remove about 75% of the PLA Navy in about 72 hours. I think that's actually a fairly accurate assessment. To do that, two things are going to be important. One's the one I'm mentioning right now, the long-range anti-ship cruise missiles. And the beauty of that is we're good at it. We are good at applying precision munitions at range, targeting and holding at risk ships at sea. And we can do it. The Air Force has got a fantastic platform with the B-1. They need to transition to the B-2 because the B-1 is aging out of their force. To the B-52, which the B-52 is apparently never going to age out of their force. And, they're doing a lot of work on its engines and wings, and it can carry a lot of LRASMs and do a lot of damage. And the Navy's okay at this. They have F-18s that obviously drop a lot less weapons, but they've also begun to re-engineer the P-8, the new maritime patrol aircraft, to be able to do this. So that's a lot of different assets launched from a lot of different places, both in continental United States, and Guam, and Japan, and Australia, from all over, that could place them at risk. So the first thing is get good at that. The second thing, and by the way, the services have been slow to buy LRASM. There's just no other description for it. The Senate and House have had to force, Congress has had to force procurement of this. I can't explain why, but they were just exceptionally slow. They're now finally buying. This is the first year that the services have requested a max purchase, a max line purchase of the system, despite the fact it's PACON's been screaming for it for 7 years.
What is the system for the audience?
The long-range anti-ship cruise missile is about, more than several hundred kilometers range missile that's launched from, as I said, all those aviation platforms, and does enough maneuvering that it'll be very hard for the Chinese in endgame, I think, to defend their ships. And I'm not going to compare Chinese ships to the Moskva, but I'm going to say that, the Chinese share some aspects of the challenge of anti-ship cruise missile defense. And that's taking what were initially land-based systems and trying to optimize them for sea-based, for sea-based assets. So that's the first thing. The second thing you got to do is you got to exploit your undersea warfare advantage. We have to maintain our submarine fleet. We have to have enough of what are called Mark 48 advanced capability torpedoes. They're called Mark 48 ADCAPs. We've got to have enough of those. We've got to be able to reload them in multiple places throughout the AOR. It's a slow warfare. It won't get that 72-hour timeline of Flores, but it will eventually destroy the whole Chinese Navy. And we need to have enough of them so that we can, as a crisis builds up, flow submarines into the Western Pacific. The Navy has historically said they need about 69 submarines to have the right level. I'll just tell you, we haven't had 69 submarines in 15 years. and we're currently, and these are attack submarines, we're currently around 52. We're going to bottom out around 48 and then start to slowly build back up. So we do have a gap there, but luckily we're really good at this and the Chinese aren't. We do have a significant advantage in undersea warfare. So we need to support that with better what are called TAGO ships. They're the hydrographic ships that listen for submarines at great ranges, and then the P-8s that I mentioned earlier, the maritime patrol aircraft. You have to have quite a few of those. So really invest in your undersea warfare. So LRASM's undersea warfare. If I could give you one more, we've got to figure out how to defend Guam. Guam is the base for the submarines. So we reload the submarines. It's the base for at least the fighters and support aircraft, if not the bombers themselves. One other thing, it's U.S. territory with 150,000 plus American citizens on it. We need to actually defend this, and it's going to be hard. I see, where sometimes senior DOD officials are off the record say, it's impossible. Missiles are going to get through. Okay, missiles are going to get through. I got some bad news for our ships at sea. Missiles are going to get through there too. If we actually get into a hot war with China, missiles are going to get through. That doesn't mean you don't defend these critical areas, especially these critical assets. So, we do have to have some defense, and you have to invest in that ahead of time. You have to deter China. You have to convince China not to do it. We also need the message, this is U.S. territory. If you hit this, Chinese territory will be hit. You will be escalatory in hitting this. And we're not doing a very good job of that. The most famous comments on Guam are that, a few more troops on there, it might slide into the sea. You don't hear us very explicitly signaling to the Chinese, this is American territory. Strikes on this are the same as strikes on California, Hawaii, Washington State, and you can expect a similar response. But if we do those kind of things, we'll increase our ability to deter China. Because I tell you, the one country that'll know that we've improved these capabilities before any other is the Chinese. They'll be studying this carefully. It can have a strong deterrent effect. And then if deterrence fails, it can have a war-winning effect for the Air Force and the Navy.
Do you think that if China attacks Taiwan, it would pretty quickly go for Guam?
I would. That doesn't mean that's how they're going to fight. Now, I don't understand their escalation management. And since I used to think I understood Russian escalation management, and I clearly don't, I'm a little uncomfortable that anyone in our government fully understands the escalation management of our adversaries. So you have to be careful with this. But I would say that if you're really going to go after Taiwan and the United States gets involved, you're going to have to have hard decisions. Do you attack the U.S. airfields in Japan? Because if you do that, I think it's highly likely Japan will allow the U.S. to use its airfields. It will have access. I don't know that it's highly likely that Japan will be all in on day one of a conflict. But if the Chinese strike Japanese airfields to limit U.S. capacity and capability from there, then Japan will be all in. And so they have a tough decision there. And I think they have an equally tough decision in Guam if we signal, as I said previously, that it is U.S. Sovereign U.S. territory. Those are U.S. citizens, and a strike on Guam is a strike on the United States, a conventional strike. So the answer to that question is pretty complex, and I think it feeds into, do they strike Japan as well?